Which celebrity is a complete a-hole? My great-grandmother was a nurse at a hospital and a baseball player had come in to visit some kids for some low-key PR thing. She wasn't a baseball fan so she had no clue who he was. He told he was there for whichever room he had to be in. I remember the conversation verbatim because of how often she told it. Gee, what's the name M? You telling a joke or something? Gee, no. I need your name for the register M. You don't know who I am? Gee, do you know who I am M? No. Gee, well, how do you do? My name is Adeline. What's yours? M. Scoffs. Mickey Mantle G. And how do you spell it? M. Christ, lady. Maybe you didn't hear me Mickey Mantle. G. Maybe you didn't hear me. How do you spell it? M. Long pause. Gritted teeth. M.I. She went home that night and told her husband what had happened and she said that there was a famous guy there that she didn't know who he was and he was really mad about it. Grandpa Al asked who it was. She told him it was like some baseball guy and she didn't know. And he was a total jackass. His name is Mickey something. Grandpa Al's response. Mickey goddamn Mantle? I love that story. Justin Bieber, but that's low hanging fruit. GF took her cousin, a huge fan of his, to one of his concerts a few weeks ago. The cousin won them backstage passes and even the super fun cousin was worried he'd be mean. I guess there were a few times on stage he freaked out and stopped songs that he didn't complete. One of them he was singing. Then he'd stop to yell at the guitarist backup singer behind him that he was doing just fine and didn't want his help. He rage quit that song. Then another that involved him playing an acoustic guitar that didn't sound great. So he started complaining, thanks guys. Thanks for giving me an untuned guitar. Thanks a lot. Then rage quit that song too. To put some perspective on it, backstage the people wrangling the fans got in each fan's face and told them they weren't allowed to scream, grab him, hug him, etc. Everyone. I think the guy loathes his career at this point and probably should retire for his sake. I've posted this before in another thread. For me, it was definitely Will Smith. Bad Boys 2 was filmed in Miami. One of the scenes involves the Metro Mover, a mass transit rail system that operates in downtown. My father owned a large plot of empty land near a key Metro Mover stop. He agreed to let them film and use his land as a base of operations. All he asked for in return was some passes for me and a friend to visit a closed set. I guess I was like 13 years old at the time. So myself, a friend of mine, and my father all go to the closed set on the specified day. We get in just fine. The person taking us around was awesome. We got the whole tour, etc. Then, our guide asked us if we wanted to meet the stars. We go up to the Metro Mover station and see the filming taking place. Both Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are there. After the scene was over, our guide approaches Will Smith and tries to tell him who we are and how nice of our family it was to give the line for free for the filming. Will Smith proceeds to ignore her and then blows past myself and my friend and leaves without even acknowledging us. My friend and I were crushed. Martin Lawrence saw all of this happen and immediately ran over to us. He apologized for Will Smith's actions and then talked to us for a good while. He was an incredibly nice person, but I was so disappointed in the way Will Smith treated us. He knew we were huge fans, that my family was doing their production a big favor, and didn't give a single F. I got to interact with Will at Burning Man year before last. He was entering the event through the airport at the time. He was wearing a costume at the time so we didn't immediately know it was him. He was right behind Rosario Dawson, amazingly sweet lady, and started giving her crap for not recognizing him. Asked how she couldn't remember a guy who was in a love scene with her. She made him take his mask off to see who it was. The funny thing is once she recognized him, she recognized his bodyguard standing next to him and gave the bodyguard a big hug before giving Will one. As Will came through line we gave him a little bit of traditional for people greeting those who come in, and he played along nicely. He did balk when a transvestite told him she had to spank him before he could get in, but let Rosario spank him instead. Was pretty funny. I wonder if the little bit of anonymity the costume gave him made him more comfortable, or it could just be he was in a good mood being on vacation. Either way, he seemed nice enough at the time. This will probably get buried, but oh well. Mariah Carey. I was working as a PA at the time and a friend of mine knew her assistant. So I get a call from said assistant to see if I wanted to make some extra money and help set up her house she was renting while she was in LA. We were supposed to start at 10 AM. So I show up at 9:30 and there's about 10 people standing in the driveway. I ask what's up and they say they won't let us inside. One of these 10 people was her manager. One was someone very high up with Virgin Records, basically her boss, and the other was the nanny with her, Mariah's, 2 kids. None could go in, not even her own children. We waited outside until 1 o'clock. 3 hours standing around and waiting because she's still sleeping. So we go inside and her assistant comes up to me and another PA and we are told don't look at her. If she comes into the room you're in, leave. If you don't I have to ask you to leave. This turns into basically a game of hide and seek while we're trying to set up the little princess's house. Around 7 o'clock the assistant asked us if we were hungry and she was going to order something. She asks if we like steak and of course we say hell yeah. So she orders takeout from Morton's Steakhouse, a pretty damn nice place, around $50 per steak. For the rest of the people there, at least there would be some good food at the end of this. Maybe she's not a huge bee after all. So frickin' nice of her to do that for us. So the other PA and I are finishing up upstairs and everyone else is downstairs eating. We finish up and head down to the kitchen and Mariah is there. We make sure not to look at her and wash our hands. As we turn around she is cutting up the 2 steaks left for us and feeding them to her effing dogs. Then she looks at us and says you guys can get something on your way home. They were hungry. The assistant pulls us aside, asks us if we're finished, then handed us each $80. The agreed amount was $200 each, and says she'll get the rest to us. She never did. Goes either way depending on who you were in the situation. My dad met Christopher Walken in a bar, but it wasn't under pleasant circumstances. Basically, Walken had been doing something in the area, my dad has no clue what, and he walked into the bar around 8 or 9 PM. My dad wasn't that old, maybe in his 30s tops, so this was about 20 years ago or so. As soon as Walken sits down, people at the bar start mobbing him for autographs, grabbing stained napkins, baring skin, whatever it'd take to get his autograph. He just stood up angrily, shouted something akin to F off, all of you, leave me the F alone, and then pointed to my dad and said, but give that guy a drink on me. He's the only one who didn't give a dart or something to that effect. My dad doesn't believe in being starstruck, so he kinda just went, neat, Christopher Walken, and continued watching TV. Michael Phelps. Most people thought he was a tool in high school. He was the type of person to assume faculty would kiss his A and be fine with him skipping class and not doing work because he was swimming. They hated him. He would also randomly throw food in the hallway as people would head out of lunch en masse. Only the administration liked him because he made them look good. They even stopped class to make us watch one of his swims on TV. They went so far as to rename the street the school was on to Michael Phelps Way, which also pissed off the neighborhood. Though they changed it back when he got caught smoking weed. A lame reason, but whatever to get his name off. I can confirm, he used to train at this pool club near my house where I swam competitively in the summer. It was also next to the only reasonably affordable ice rink in the area and a lot of people of all ages skated there. Phelps bought the ice rink despite lots of protests because he wanted to build his own training pool or something. Well, the rink closed. He never built the pool. He owns this building and hasn't done shit with it for years. Meanwhile, a loot of people can no longer skate or play ice hockey in Baltimore because the only decent affordable rink in the area closed. He also came to visit the pool club in the height of his Olympic fame because he used to train there and they have a pretty good swim team. He was supposed to meet some of the younger swimmers and watch them train. He spent about 2 minutes meeting them and then retreated to this viewing area behind glass and demanding the pool staff bring him snacks. Just a shy guy. Madonna. The showing up 2-4 hours late for her concerts is not a new story. F Madonna. I had to work 2 of her shows a few years back. She cancelled one about an hour after it was supposed to start and the second one she was 3 hours late getting on stage for. The whole arena was pissed at her. I always felt that Bill Murray is secretly an a-hole. So Richard Dreyfuss came to my school once and did a talk. Someone asked him how it was working with Bill Murray and Dreyfuss went on a huge rant about how much he hates him. Apparently the director asked Dreyfuss and Murray to come to a meeting to rework some scenes. Dreyfuss showed up and Murray wasn't there. So they worked anyway and they went non-stop until like 2 AM. That's when Murray showed up, drunk. So Dreyfus was like, "Where the F were you?" And in response Murray picked up a huge crystal ashtray and threw it directly at Dreyfus's face, missing him by an inch. Then he just turned around and left. His rant however showed how much of an a-hole Dreyfus is, because he explained that he has a literal list of people he hates and will not work with. Like an actual written list that he keeps to remind himself not to work with these people. The only other person on that list I remember was Oliver Stone, who by all accounts is also a huge a-hole. So there you go. Hollywood is full of a-holes. I hate hating on, so I'm going to say that I have met Cher a few times. Not only did she remember my name after a few years, she had asked about my then sick mother, who had since passed. Cher seemed really upset by the news and it made me choke up, because in my opinion, Cher was a true diva, and she remembered me. She was not a diva at all, in the bad sense, just a totally cool person. Gwyneth Paltrow, friend ran into her at a restaurant. She left her alone. But it was my friend's birthday and her friend sang happy birthday to her. Gwyneth came over and said it was her birthday too and chatted for a while. Then some fan came up and geeked out, so she went and sat back down. She was very sweet. Ariana Grande, friend of friend, works in a high position at a casino she's performed at. Says she, a diva of epic proportions, actually demanded to be carried on and off stage because she was so tired. Hall of Fame pitcher Steve Colton. I was 6 years old and asked him for an autograph. He said sure, $50. I said I don't have $50. He said then you don't have my autograph. I was 6. I have a waiter friend who took care of Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley once. Apparently MJ told him that the privilege of waiting on them was his tip. Barkley slipped him $100 on the way out and apologized. I met Barkley. He's a man of the people and isn't above anyone. I just happened to catch him walking into a hotel. I stuck my hand out and said, "Hey Sir Charles," and he shook my hand. I asked him if he was going to the bar and he turns around says, "Yeah," while walking in. Later on, he was buying everyone in the bar shots and I'm going to assume he left a nice tip. I've heard Gene Simmons is a douche. His reality show confirmed it. I worked at a server at a restaurant that he owns. He was there for the grand opening and all that stuff. He selected me to be his VIP server, meaning I had to overserve him and his friends a bunch of drinks and cheap food. The whole time he whistled at me to come over to take his order, didn't bother to learn my name, called me sugar boobs twice, and ran me ragged. Oh, and the airfare didn't tip me. Their comped bill was over $800. F Gene Simmons. Mike Myers has such a bad reputation in Hollywood that it's basically ruined his acting career. He still does voice work for Shrek projects, but other than that he's basically been forced into retirement. Michael Jordan, the guy invited his high school coach, who benched cut him, and another player on the team to his Hall of Fame induction just to say, "Look where I'm at now," and then practically told his kids, "I wouldn't want to be you," in comparison to his career and their potential. Here's what he said to the guy he invited while he was still there. "And then there's Leroy Smith. Now you guys think that's a myth. Leroy Smith was a guy when I got cut. He made the team on the varsity team and he's here tonight. He's still the same 6'7" guy. He's not any bigger, probably his game is about the same. But he started the whole process with me, because when he made the team and I didn't, I wanted to prove not just to Leroy Smith, not just to myself, but to the coach that picked Leroy over me. I wanted to make sure you understood you made a mistake, dude." The worst part is he completely made up this woe is me myth to get ahead. He was put on JV as a sophomore. Why? Because everyone on the varsity squad was 6 feet 2 inches or taller and mostly seniors, and he was 5 feet 10 inches sophomore. Also, the coach basically had him play JV because he'd get more minutes than riding the pine in varsity, which is what you do to a rising sophomore. Nearly every coach in the world would do the same thing. William Shatner. I worked with him for a while behind stage at a con. Guy was a D to pretty much everyone, to the point that even other actors wouldn't go near him. Not sure if it was just a bad day, but he rubbed pretty much everyone the wrong way. This is nothing new. Pretty much everyone from the Star Trek cast still to this day hates him. He would constantly argue with directors about not getting enough camera time despite being the main character. Michael Bay. When I lived in LA, Every person I knew in the entertainment industry, everyone, had at least one unique story about what an unnecessarily ridiculous, raging a-hole Michael Bay was for absolutely no good reason. Marky Mark. Google him. The Blinding Thing was a long time ago, and he's since gained a reputation of being one of the most level-headed and respectable people in Hollywood. Also, I feel like what he did before is pretty much common knowledge by this point. Joelle Zimmerman Acaded More 5. Chevy Chase almost shoved me out of the way of the urinal so he could use it. When I called him out on it, his response was, "Who are you?" Presumably trying to use star power to get what he wanted. Cait Jenner. I don't really know why, but she is an a-hole. As a Kardashians watcher, the About Bruce episodes are horrible. She didn't seem to give a sh how her family felt. Just me. That Vanity Fair article was also atrocious, calling out Chris etc. Like, I'm sorry, if your husband of 20 plus years was transitioning, that is not easy. And Chris isn't a lesbian, so what did she want exactly? Also, when she said in that Diane Sawyer interview that Khloe was struggling, I think that was really unfair. Everyone knows that these days if you show the slightest inclination at having a problem with someone like a trans person, that can really have an effect on your career. Just makes her look like a bigot when in reality she probably just was struggling like anyone would. And her uber conservative views that don't take into account what the people she supports think about trans people and the gay marriage thing. Good for her for living her life as she wants etc, but dang, she gives off a scumbag kind of vibe. I could go on. Rant.